Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe to the channel. Van not hard, my pleasure. You ever look back on something from your childhood and realize, yeah, that's probably when the adults in the room decided, this one's gonna be a problem? Yeah. That moment for me involved an SNES, a treadmill, and my cousin flying through the air like a rejected stunt double. Now, before you clutch your pearls, nobody died. But to this day, every time someone says, kids will be kids, my dad's eye twitches like he's being drafted back into Nam. I was maybe 8? 9 tops. My 2 cousins were over, one was my age, and the other, I think, was 5 or 6. We were in our den, this brown carpeted time capsule that always smelled like popcorn and Pine Sol. Classic 90s parenting. My dad was watching us, which meant he was half snoozing in the armchair with one eye open on us, button mashing through Super Mario World. And then, the man made the fatal error, he got up to pee. 2 minutes. That's all it took. Probably less, actually. By the time he came back, his youngest niece had become a human projectile. And somehow, that entire sequence started because we got bored of Yoshi. So here's what happened. We'd been playing Super Mario World for like 2 hours straight. My cousin, let's call him Darren, kept dying in the same lava level and rage quitting. My younger cousin, the little one we apparently tried to launch into orbit, we'll call her Bella. Bella wasn't even playing. She was just sitting there watching us, swinging her legs, annoying us with questions like, why does Yoshi eat things with his tongue? And, can you get married in Mario? The SNES froze mid-game. I still don't know why, it just did. I think the universe gave us an out and we spat in its face. That's when we noticed the treadmill. Now, this treadmill wasn't one of those fancy digital ones. This was a 1980s steel and rubber death trap with a single dial labeled speed. No start button, no safety clip, just turn the dial and go. I don't even know why we had it. No one in the house exercised. And because our child brains were 95% Kool-Aid and chaos, we thought it would be hilarious to make Bella stand on it. Just for a second. Just to see what happens. She was game. She was always trying to impress us. And I swear, we started slow. But then Darren, that lunatic, cranked the dial to max. Like straight up, 1 to 10, he took us to 10. Bella's little legs didn't even try to run. She went horizontal instantly. I remember her arms pinwheeling, eyes wide, and then boom off the end, straight into the drywall like a Looney Tunes character. My dad walked in right as she hit the wall. You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? Bella hit the wall with this sickening thud and slid down like a cartoon. For a second, we all just stood there, me, Darren, even Bella, like none of us could process what just happened. And then she started crying. Not that whiny, kid just didn't get her way crying. This was that deep, shocked, painful cry that doesn't even sound human at first. And that's when I saw the bump on her forehead already forming. Like a freaking cartoon goose egg. This big, purple swelling thing that looked like it had its own heartbeat. And that's the exact moment my dad opened the door. He didn't even take a full step into the room. He just froze in the doorway, holding a can of Coke, and stared at the 3 of us. Bella was on the floor, Darren and I were still by the treadmill, and I'm pretty sure the guilt was radiating off us like steam. His eyes moved to the wall. There was a smudge. Like a real mark where Bella's head made contact. Then back to her forehead. Then to us. What the hell did you do? That's when we started crying. Me and Darren. Full-blown, snot-faced, oh no we're gonna die crying. We were trying to talk over each other, trying to explain, but all that came out was, the SNES broke. IT was dumb. We were gonna turn it down. She said okay. My dad wasn't even mad yet. That was the worst part. He looked scared. Like terrified. Like this is the moment someone loses custody level scared. My dad didn't yell. He didn't scream or curse or threaten to take away the SNES forever. He just dropped the Coke can, literally dropped it, and went into full-on crisis mode. He scooped Bella up, looked her over, saw the knot swelling like it was trying to signal aliens, and just whispered, "Oh, Jesus." Then he looked at me and Darren. Not with rage. Not even disappointment. It was this horrible look of "you two might have just ruined my life." I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I do now. That was the face of a man already playing out the phone call he'd have to make to his sister. Bella's mom. My aunt. A woman who once flipped out because we gave Bella chocolate after 8 p.m. I watched him pace with Bella in his arms like he was trying to negotiate with God. Okay. She's conscious. That's good. She's crying, that's also good, I think. Pupils look the same size. Right? That's important? He didn't even try to clean the wall. The treadmill was still running. Just whirring away on full blast, like a murder weapon with no remorse. Then my dad looked at me, eyes bloodshot, and said, "If anyone asks, she tripped." So my dad tells us to stick to the story, she tripped. That's all. Nobody touched the treadmill. I was in the room. I saw it happen. Now keep in mind, we were kids. Like, dumb kids. The kind who still believed quicksand was a real threat to daily life. So asking us to lie convincingly? Yeah, that was doomed from the jump. He put ice on Bella's head, gave her a popsicle, and told her, "Don't tell your mom about the treadmill. Just say you tripped." Bella nodded. Not because she agreed, but because she was 5 and there was a red popsicle in her hand. And then my aunt walked in. She was there to pick them up. My dad hadn't even had time to call her. He tried to stall, offered her a drink, made weird small talk, mentioned the weather like he just discovered it existed. But the second she saw Bella's forehead? Game over. What happened to her head? My dad froze. Bella took a long, slow lick of her popsicle and said in the most innocent, deadpan voice I have ever heard in my life, "Darren and my name put me on the treadmill and made it go zoom and I flew into the wall." I wish I could describe the way my aunt turned to look at my dad. Like he'd just admitted to running a fight club for toddlers. Her voice dropped 2 octaves. "You were watching them?" I've never seen an adult sweat like my dad did in that moment. Not even in July. Not even at Disney World in line for Space Mountain. The man looked like someone poured a bucket of guilt straight down his back. And all he could manage was, it wasn't going that fast. Bro. That was his opening statement. That's what he led with. My aunt's face twisted in this slow, silent fury. Like you could hear her blinking. She didn't scream, not yet, but you could feel it loading. Meanwhile, Bella was just chilling with her popsicle, totally unfazed, like this was just another Tuesday. She flew into a wall, Steve. She's fine. Look, she's got the popsicle. She has a literal goose egg on her head. She tripped. It was just bad timing. I stepped out to pee for like 2 minutes. You left them alone with a treadmill? At that point, Darren and I tried to sneak away, as if we could disappear into the couch cushions. But my aunt clocked us immediately. "What were you two thinking?" And like absolute idiots, we both answered at the same time. It was Darren's idea. No, it wasn't, it was his. And right then, I swear I saw my dad's soul just exit his body. Like he realized he had fully lost control of every single variable in his life. My aunt didn't yell after that. She didn't threaten, didn't even finish her sentence. That's how you know it's serious, when an adult just goes quiet mid-lecture and stares through you like she's trying to see the regrets forming in real time. She took Bella's hand and said, "We're leaving." But the way she said it? Like she was rescuing her from a war zone. Like we'd turned into wild animals and this was a documentary about negligent zoo management. She didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug anyone. Just left. And my dad, man, he looked like a busted-up scarecrow after a storm. Just standing there in the middle of the room, the treadmill still running, Mario still frozen on the TV screen, Coke can still on the floor, and 2 shame-drenched boys who suddenly had a lot of questions about what happens when Child Protective Services gets involved. No one said a word for probably 5 minutes. Then Dad turned, walked over, unplugged the treadmill, and said, "We are never speaking of this again." But it was too late. I already knew. We'd crossed the line. This wasn't just your grounded territory. This was core memory material. Something about the silence, the look on my dad's face, the unspoken "you almost ruined me," it landed different. I wasn't just scared of getting in trouble. I was ashamed. And I didn't even fully know what shame was yet. But I felt it settle in my chest like a brick I couldn't cough up. The rest of that day? Dead silent. No yelling, no lectures, no punishments. Just this thick, choking quiet that settled over the house like fog. It felt like we'd all survived a natural disaster, but emotionally. Darren and I just sat there, staring at the SNES screen, neither of us daring to turn it back on. We didn't even look at the treadmill. It was like it had become cursed. My dad retreated to the kitchen and stayed there for what felt like hours. Not even pretending to do anything, just leaning on the counter with both hands, like he was trying to hold up the whole house with his body weight. I remember hearing him sigh at least 5 different times, each one longer and more defeated than the last. That night, he didn't tuck me in. Didn't say goodnight. Just popped his head into my room, looked at me like he was seeing a ghost, and said, "Don't get up. And don't touch that treadmill. Ever." I nodded like I'd been given a court order. Then came the next day, the phone call. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I was definitely listening from the hallway. It was my aunt. I could only hear my dad's side of it, but man, it was brutal. A lot of, "I know," and "it won't happen again," and "the killer, you have every right to be upset." That one hit me harder than any punishment ever could. He was owning it. Taking the fall. Not blaming us. Just accepting the guilt like it was a job he didn't apply for but got hired into anyway. And the worst part? He didn't deserve it. So yeah, my dad took the blame. Carried the whole mess on his shoulders like it was just part of being a single parent. But what really got me? He never threw us under the bus. He could have. He could have told my aunt the truth, that he walked out for 2 minutes to pee and we basically turned her daughter into a crash test dummy. But he didn't. He absorbed it like a sponge. And I felt that deep. Darren and I weren't okay. Like, we weren't bleeding or grounded or anything, but emotionally? We were walking around with 50-pound weights of guilt strapped to our backs. Every time we saw each other that weekend, we just gave each other that look like we'd both survived a bank robbery that went sideways and knew we couldn't ever tell anyone the real story. And Bella? She didn't come over the next weekend. Or the one after that. In kid time, that was like, forever. I asked my dad about it and he just sighed again and said, "Maybe it's best if things cool off." I didn't ask what cool off meant. I knew. I realized then that actions actually had consequences. Not just no video games or go to your room stuff, but real-life consequences. People not trusting you anymore. Family tension you could feel in the room like static. I remember lying awake one night thinking, what if that bump on her head never goes away? Like I'd marked her for life. I had no idea how concussions worked. I was 8. For all I knew, I'd broken her forever. And somehow, even worse than the fear was this sinking feeling that my dad didn't look at me quite the same. It wasn't until a few months later, Thanksgiving, that we saw Bella and my aunt again. I remember sitting in the car on the way to Grandma's house, my stomach in knots, silently praying Bella had forgotten the whole thing. I had this fantasy in my head where she'd run up to us, hug us, and we'd all laugh about it like some twisted sitcom episode. Nope. We walked in and I saw Bella across the room, sitting on the couch with a juice box, completely still. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and she didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just blinked and turned away. Cold. And my aunt? She gave my dad the kind of hug where your arms go around someone but your body doesn't. Like the hug was legally required but emotionally vacant. The tension at that table was thick. Nobody brought it up. Not directly. but everything was just off. My grandma kept asking me things like, "How's school?" in a super chipper voice that made it worse. Like everyone had been briefed on how to avoid the subject. At one point, Darren tried to joke about it. He nudged me and whispered, "Dude, remember when Bella?" I kicked him under the table so hard he dropped his fork. We didn't speak again the rest of the meal. After dinner, I tried to talk to Bella. Just a simple, "Hey, how's your head?" She didn't say anything. Just looked at me, touched her forehead, and walked away. And that's when it hit me, she did remember. And it wasn't funny to her. Not even a little. She trusted us, and we betrayed that. We made her a joke. A physics experiment. And while we thought we were being funny or wild or whatever, she hit a wall. Literally and metaphorically. That was the first time I really understood what it means when someone's hurt because of you. Not mad. Not annoyed. Hurt. It was late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, when I finally decided to talk to my dad about everything. I'd spend hours pacing in my room, replaying the Thanksgiving dinner in my head, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. But it wasn't until I saw my dad sitting in the kitchen alone, staring at the table like it was an interrogation room, that I knew I had to say something. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Just kept stirring his coffee, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying something too heavy for one person. I sat down across from him. And for a long time, neither of us said anything. Finally, I broke the silence. "Dad, I don't think Bella's ever going to forgive us, is she?" His hand paused, the spoon halfway to his mouth, and he let out this deep sigh. Like a man who knew exactly what you were going to say but still had to hear it. He put the spoon down and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know, kid. I don't know." Then he looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was searching for something in my eyes. "I know you didn't mean to hurt her. But that's the thing about doing something stupid. Sometimes, you don't get a chance to take it back. You can apologize all you want, but sometimes people won't forget." I felt the weight of his words drop into my chest like a stone. But it wasn't just stupid, Dad. It was, we betrayed her. She trusted us. And we hurt her. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. And that's the part that sticks. Trust. Once you break it, it's hard to get it back. Sometimes you don't even realize how bad it is until you see the consequences in someone else's eyes." I didn't know what to say. There wasn't anything I could say. The guilt I'd been carrying was heavy, but hearing my dad say it out loud, it made it so much more real. It wasn't just a childhood mistake. It was something that could change relationships forever. "I'm sorry, Dad. I don't know how to make it right." He shrugged, but it wasn't dismissive. More like he was acknowledging that some things just couldn't be fixed. You don't always get a second chance at fixing things. But what you can do is try to learn from it. And don't make the same mistake again. And that was it. No magical fix. No promises that everything would go back to normal. Just this quiet, painful understanding that some things stay broken, and you have to carry that weight. A few weeks after that conversation with my dad, I decided I had to do something. Anything. I couldn't just sit there and let everything fester. I called Bella. It took me a few tries, she didn't pick up the first couple of times, which honestly made the whole thing worse. But finally, she did. "Hello?" I remember feeling like my heart was going to explode in my chest. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't even rehearsed it, I just knew I had to say something. Hey, Bella. It's my name. I just wanted to say. I'm really sorry. For what happened. I know it was a mistake. And I didn't mean to hurt you, or make it a joke, or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I feel bad about it. There was a long pause on the other end. And then, to my surprise, Bella said, "I know. I waited, hoping for more, hoping she'd say, "It's okay," or "I forgive you," or anything that would make this feel better. But instead, she just sighed and added, "But it still hurt. A lot." And that hit me harder than anything she could have yelled at me. It wasn't just about what we'd done, it was about how it had affected her. How badly it had impacted her trust in us. How she didn't just let it go, like I thought she would. She remembered. And it hurt. "I'm really sorry, Bella," I said again, the words feeling like they couldn't come close to fixing the damage. She didn't say anything for a few more seconds. And then, almost as if to end the conversation, she just said, "Okay," and hung up. And that was it. I didn't get a big apology back. I didn't get some magical forgiveness speech. I just got the knowledge that the apology had to be enough for me. And that was the worst part. Sometimes, making things right doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. Sometimes, you just have to sit with the consequences of your actions and let the pieces fall where they may. After that phone call with Bella, I spent weeks thinking I could somehow fix things. I replayed the moment over and over in my head, imagining ways to make everything right, to somehow reverse the damage we'd done. But the truth was, there was no magic apology that could fix the broken trust. There was no way to unlaunch her into the wall or take back the way we had acted like it was some kind of prank. I started to understand that it wasn't about making things better anymore, it was about accepting that things had changed, and sometimes, things don't go back to the way they were. Sometimes, trust is something you can lose, and you have to live with that. A couple of months later, I saw Bella at a family gathering. She was sitting at the other end of the table, chatting with my aunt, and when our eyes met, there was that same look, the distance. It wasn't anger or resentment, but it was the kind of distance that comes from realizing that something inside you has changed, and it doesn't go away. I didn't expect her to run over and give me a hug. I didn't even expect her to smile. But I did expect the silence. And that silence, it wasn't just between us. It was a gap that had grown in the family. You could feel it every time we got together, like the quietest conversation happening in the background. Nobody said it out loud, but we all felt it. I'd like to tell you that Bella and I eventually went back to being friends. That we laughed about it and everything was fine again. But the truth is, we never really did. She forgave me. I could tell. She wasn't holding it against me anymore, but she also wasn't forgetting it. And sometimes, that's worse than outright anger. Because it leaves you with this uneasy sense of walking on eggshells, never fully sure where you stand. I learned something important that day, though. Something I didn't understand when I was a kid, that fixing things isn't always about getting back to where you were. Sometimes, it's about accepting what happened, acknowledging that the past can't be changed, and learning to live with the way things are now. And that's not always easy. As the years passed, I didn't think much about that incident with Bella. Or at least, I didn't want to think about it. I convinced myself that I'd done my part, apologized, learned my lesson, and moved on. But as time went on, I realized it wasn't that simple. It wasn't just about me feeling bad about what I did. It wasn't just about the apology I gave. It was about growing up and really understanding the impact of my actions on others, and how sometimes, growth means facing things that are uncomfortable and sitting with that discomfort until you understand why it happened. And honestly, the hard part was learning that I had to let go of the idea that I could make everything right. Some things don't get fixed. People don't just forget, and not every apology is a magic cure. I started looking at other aspects of my life, my relationships with friends, with my family, and I began to see patterns. Small mistakes I'd made, things I'd brushed off, thinking I could just apologize and move on. But the truth was, sometimes, those mistakes left scars. And sometimes, those scars don't heal quickly. Some things just take longer to work through. The biggest lesson I took away from that whole experience? The importance of patience, not just with others, but with myself. Learning how to accept that sometimes, I couldn't fix things immediately. Sometimes, I needed to just give people the space they needed, and let time do its thing. And eventually, with time, I stopped feeling like I needed to fix everything. I realized that the best thing I could do now was be aware. Be mindful. Understand that I had the power to hurt people, but I also had the power to be better. To show up differently. To take responsibility without expecting an immediate everything's okay response. Bella and I? We never became best friends again. But every time I saw her, I made sure she knew I cared. In my own way, I showed her that I wasn't the same person I was when we launched her into a wall. And in some weird, unspoken way, I think that's all she ever really needed from me. Looking back on everything, on the dumb mistake we made, the consequences, the silence, and the way everything played out, I realize one thing: sometimes, the most painful lessons are the ones you don't want to learn. I thought that being sorry was enough. I thought that a simple apology, a few words of regret, could fix everything. But that's not how life works. Not when it comes to the things that matter most: trust, respect, and the emotional scars we leave behind. I learned that growth doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't come in a neat little package with a ribbon on top. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It's filled with moments of self-doubt, regret, and a lot of awkward conversations. But those are the moments that teach you who you really are and who you want to be moving forward. I also learned that sometimes, people won't forgive you right away. And sometimes, they won't forgive you at all. That's the reality. Not everyone is going to give you a second chance. But the important part is knowing that, even if they don't, you still have to learn from it. You still have to grow. You still have to be a better version of yourself, even if the person you hurt doesn't see it or doesn't care. It's not easy. It's not quick. But it's necessary. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. Not because I think what happened was okay, because it wasn't. But because it's part of the story of who I am now. It's part of the reason I'm more aware, more thoughtful, and more careful with my actions. I'll always remember the look on Bella's face when we saw each other at Thanksgiving. That silent distance between us. And even though I know it was a painful reminder of my mistake, it was also a turning point. It's a reminder that life doesn't always give you do-overs, and that sometimes, the best thing you can do is learn, accept the consequences, and move forward as a better person. So, if you're reading this and you've made a mistake you can't undo, don't expect an easy fix. Don't expect to be forgiven right away. But do expect to grow. And do expect to become someone better because of it. That's the lesson I carry with me now. And I think that's the one I'll always remember. Don't worry, nothing broke, but trying to explain why my cousin had a big pump knot on her head got my dad into a lot of trouble.